Salwa is a 63-year-old Palestinian living in the north of Gaza. In this video, she can be seen describing how she cleaned the rubble from her home after a recent bombardment from Israeli airstrikes. As Salwa cleans the rubble, you can hear Israeli drones flying in the sky, a common background noise Gazans have heard constantly for more than 200 days. Her daughter, who lives in Montreal, is trying to get her a visa to flee Gaza to come to Canada as a refugee. The only border that Gazans can cross in order to come as a refugee to Canada is currently being invaded by the Israeli military.
At the very beginning of the genocide, we were told that the southern Gaza Strip was the safe part. That was where Palestinians in Gaza needed to evacuate to. And they kept moving more south, and the bombing and the shelling kept following them south.
They're asking for a biometric test, and my mother lives in the north of Gaza. So the north of Gaza has no offices, no biometric offices, and it's dangerous to move from the north to the south. Anyone will be moving from north to south, he might be shooted. So I don't want to put her in risk.
Now, as Rafah is being invaded, it's unlikely that Salwa or any other Palestinian can cross the border to conduct their biometrics test or to flee Gaza through the border to Egypt in order to come to Canada as a refugee.
The ongoing war between Israel and Hamas has created a humanitarian catastrophe.
On January 9th, Canada unveiled the special measures for extended family in Gaza. Through this temporary resident visa program, Gazans with family members who are either Canadian citizens or permanent residents can apply to come to Canada as a refugee for up to 3 years. Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada said they are not sure how many Gazans have arrived to Canada through this program, but were able to confirm that 179 Gazans have left the Gaza Strip and arrived in Egypt through this program, according to statistics from April 29th.
I can't describe the stress that I've been living under, waiting for a response while my sister and her family are in Gaza.
Sama Ardo says her sister and her sister's family have made it into Egypt, but she says that her father and his siblings are still stuck in Rafah and Khan Yunis. Ardo has been hosting a sit-in every weekday since late March outside of Immigration Minister Mark Miller's office, demanding for the IRCC to approve applications for Gazans more rapidly.
I've been waiting for a response for, I'd say, a couple months right now regarding my sister's file under the special program for Palestinians in Gaza. And so far, there's no response. And I could notice that things are not moving. So I was like thinking that I should be moving to create that pressure. I'm fighting for all Palestinians who are in the same position as me and to have a ceasefire, because this is the #1 demand right now before any other demands.
Some fear it's too late, with Israel beginning their ground invasion in Rafah and blocking the crossing to Egypt. Al-Dour hasn't had any response from Miller or his office since the sit-in began, but posters that activists have pasted up on the windows of the office almost daily have been taken down as fast as they're put up. Al-Dour has been failed by Canada's immigration program before. Al-Dour says she applied for her daughter Jana to come from Gaza to Canada in December 2023 through Global Affairs Canada. She says that her daughter's application was approved 2 weeks after she passed away in Gaza. CUTV has reached out to Miller's office multiple times over the last month, but we have not received a single response. Many applicants have been left in the dark over the status of their application.
None of the family members we have on my mother's side have received those codes, those reference codes that the government stated we need in order to proceed with the temporary resident visa application.
An applicant receives a code from the government once they've applied and have been approved to move to the next stage of their application. In early April, Haya and Mohammed finally received codes for their application after waiting 3 months without any updates from the government. Haya recently told me she is unsure whether her family will continue with the application or not. Salwa and other residents in her neighborhood have seen hospitals, schools, and mosques bombed by Israel. If it's not the risk of being shot at by the Israeli military during a ground invasion or bombed, it's disease or famine. The north of Gaza is the most food insecure, with 55% at catastrophic levels of food insecurity.
There is no food in the north. It's very rare. The food is rare, and it's only salty water. She put some tanks, bowls in her backyard to collect the rain so that she can drink from the rain. My mother, she have only one portion maybe every 3 days or every 2 days.
The World Food Programme has already sounded the alarms for imminent famine, while top US officials say famine has already begun in the north. With no safe passage to where Salwa needs to complete her biometrics test, her daughter is hesitant to continue her visa application process. Journalist Yara El-Mour spoke with multiple people in Canada who are trying to bring their family to Gaza and highlighted a widespread similarity to Haya and Mohammed's case.
Several applicants have gone to immigration lawyers to sort of file group litigations on their behalf. Just the simple fact of filing these cases has been, the lawyer said, like pushing something in the background. So these people on these cases have started receiving answers and emails from the RCC before the cases even went to court. So they feel like this might be something that's putting a little bit of pressure, that's pushing the RCC to push forward these answers.
Applicants are required to identify all scars on their body, provide a list of all social media accounts they have, and offer employment records since they were 16 years old. The IRCC said the identification of scars helps protect the health and safety of Canadians and is a standard practice when the IRCC does not have presence on the ground to conduct initial screening. They also said that this method approves applicants to come to Canada faster.
There is no connection to Gaza. When there is no lines, there is no internet. The lines are cut. Like I try to call my mom, the lines are not allowed. It's damaged, the communication. So how I'm gonna know all these information?
It's been incredibly heartbreaking to have to use the very few moments that we have of communication with my family in the Gaza Strip to essentially say we need all of these ridiculous pieces of documentation, about your employment history and whatever kind of travel documentation they may need to be able to put through the application. And then 3 months later, essentially still not be able to give them any answers with regards to the status of the applications, to tell them whether or not we could actually bring them to Canada and bring them to safety.
The Canadian government is volunteering very sensitive personal information to foreign intelligence agencies.
Those filling out the application are required to sign a section allowing for their information to be shared with both the Israeli and the Egyptian governments.
A case could be raised for a charter breach via Section 7 of the Charter of security of persons. This is completely outrageous.
The release of this information could pose a risk for whoever hands it over. A recent investigation showed that the Israeli military is feeding vast amounts of data into an artificial intelligence system that is responsible for bombing attacks that target and kill entire families. The software, called Lavender, is designed to mark suspected armed militants. Lawyer Nazar Sati, who has represented many immigration cases over the years, says that the lack of urgency Canada has towards providing visas to Gazans has allowed for a stronger market of smuggling Gazans across the border into Egypt.
People are paying $5,000 US, which amounts to about 7,000 Canadian, to smuggle people from Gaza to the Rafah crossing. I know another client, they told me that, they had to evacuate their loved one. Their loved one was extremely sick. They didn't have access to medication because, what's going on. And they paid, obviously, a smuggler. They got in, and guess what happened to our application? Annulled. I'm not saying that it's unreasonable to want to preserve the security of the Canadian public. At the very least, have them evacuated, get them out of that danger zone, and then start asking your questions there.
Critics say that Canada should be doing more to support Gazans as a result of supporting Israel's war on Gaza through both verbal support and exports to Israel's military.
If there is no water, if there is no treatment, if there is no schools, no hospitals, you don't think this is a collective punishment? They say maybe because you chose this government, you are gonna be all punished. But It's not fair. It's not fair. I hope that somebody can help my mother and help all people that needs help.
As Israel continues their ground invasion in Rafah, blockading the border to Egypt, it's uncertain whether more Gazans will be able to leave in order to come to Canada as a refugee.